Hello and good day. I'm very excited to welcome you to our webinar, Driving Strategic Success on the Front Line with our special guest, Dorie Clark. My name is Adam Briniger, and I lead our client solutions team here at ExecOnline. I'm joined by Chip Cleary, our Chief Academic Officer in charge of developing our programs at ExecOnline, and Dorie Clark, who's playing a lead role in our new manager program and the star of the show today. Chip will more fully introduce Dorie and her background in just a few minutes. Now, before we begin, I'd like to spend just a moment on ExecOnline for those on the line who are new to our company. ExecOnline enables organizations to rapidly deliver leadership development that creates lasting organizational impact. We do that in 4 ways. We partner with elite business schools like Yale and Columbia, and top experts like Dorie Clark to create university certified and proprietary programs. We deliver our content through proprietary technology and an unmatched instructional design approach that is designed for busy leaders. For our enterprise clients, we provide an effortless customer experience that reduces the lift for you so that you can focus on driving more strategic activities. And we provide market-leading ROI and business insight data so that you can communicate the value of ExecOnline programs and better understand your leadership team. Now let's discuss the agenda. So we have 4 items on the agenda today. First, organizational challenges with developing new managers. So as many of you know, we have just launched a program called Launch into Leadership, focused on the development of new managers. To build that program, we built a charter group of clients, thank you to all of them. And we had 12 focus groups and over 100 interviews with them. In this section, I'm going to share a little bit about the insights we learned, to help set the context for the discussion we'll have today. Second, I will turn it over to my partner, Chip, to discuss the new manager program structure and objectives we built. Third will be the heart of the show. So Dorie and Chip are going to discuss driving strategic success on the front line. And then fourth, we will open the lines up to Q&A so people can ask questions to Dorie. So now let's start with organizational challenges and developing new managers. So I'd like to start by describing the current state of new managers. And it's not great. There are a couple of things we know. First, on the left-hand side of the page, our new managers are not performing at the level we expect. Some 60% underperformed or failed within 2 years, according to data from CEB. Second, our managers need to raise their game. They're being asked to manage in an environment where there is more enterprise change than ever before. In the center of the page, 5 major enterprise changes in the last 5 years. They're being asked to become more strategic, and they need to do so in organizations that are substantially flatter, which means managers have to manage employees with more autonomy and often less ability to provide promotions. Given these rising expectations, our clients told us they expect the underperformance to continue. So why are new managers underperforming? So when we asked our charter group this question, they indicated that new managers fail for 3 reasons. First, they don't activate. They don't shift mentally from an individual contributor to a manager. They're not understanding how to provide value in a different way. As part of that, they're not accurately assessing the business context or setting clear goals. They are not being strategic. But even if new managers activate, they often don't adapt. As things change in the business, they are not regularly reassessing shifts and moving their teams toward the new goal. We hear this is a big pain point for CEOs as they shift the business. Third, they don't develop critical connections. As organizations get flatter, managers need to develop the critical connections to help themselves and their teams lead. So how are organizations trying to solve this problem? Well, there are 3 current approaches most organizations are taking. First is the fire hose approach, where organizations hold a half-day to a 2-day or more day meeting or workshop to raise awareness of key management responsibilities. This often does a really good job of spreading awareness, but our charter members say that it doesn't lead to application. Second is a resource library approach, where organizations provide video content for managers. The virtue of this approach is that the library can be leveraged when you have a management challenge. But these are underutilized and the content is often academic. And some organizations take a blended approach. In general, very few organizations are satisfied with these approaches. Only 9% say they're good or better. And most organizations say they want something that is more virtual and agile. So with that as context, let me turn to Chip to introduce Dorie Clark to discuss how we can drive strategic success.
Sounds great. Thanks, Adam. And appreciate everybody joining today. Really looking to get started with our conversation with Dorie. Before we do start the main event, thought it'd be helpful to just give you a sense of the approach that we've been taking to tackle the challenges that Adam has just summarized, organizational challenges with developing new managers. In working with our charter group members, Adam mentioned a charter group. We've worked with a series of our clients who have been struggling with this challenge. We've heard a couple of things from them that have really guided the approach that we've co-developed with them. One of them is that the notion of helping a new manager develop. Adam mentioned the fire hose approach, that it's not something that one does over a moment of time. It really takes a journey. So as we look to the new manager solution that we've put in place, the solution's really based around the concept of a journey. It begins with the launch into leadership, a 3-month to 12-week experience, and then has a series of additional add-on programs that different organizations can add to meet their needs, to really get a chance to work with new managers over an extended period of time to help them develop. These programs are developed with content from experts like Dorie, who we'll be talking to in just a minute, and we'll tell you a little bit more about the experience. Now, if you can move to the next slide. One of the challenges in developing new managers, if you think about what's under the surface of those organizational challenges that Adam mentioned, is simply the transition from individual contributor to leader requires lots of new capabilities. And those capabilities are of different shape and size. And what we've heard from our charter clients is that those capabilities really are a larger challenge today than in years past. In many organizations, we're looking to even our frontline leaders to behave more like more senior leaders did in years past. And so as we look to what are the program objectives that we address and launch into leadership, that foundational 12-week component, there's really 3 buckets that have been critical. Our client charter group has informed us that the single largest reason why they see, their new managers fail to launch has to do with mindset. That really successfully making that shift from what made me successful as an individual contributor is not what will take me forward. And so, in the program, we've really adopted the approach of mindset. How do we develop that? It's really something we do. We have leaders build their mindset by acting as successful leaders act. And that includes elements that have to do with taking a leadership role within the team, elements that have to do with thinking like a business person and helping to align what the team does with the business, and elements that have to do with how we manage ourselves as leaders and how we step into a leadership identity. Second category of skills is there's a series of what you could consider the technical skills of being a leader. Things like, how do I set priorities? How do I organize myself and my team? How do I, down to the level of set expectations and coach for success? And so there's a need to develop a management toolkit. And then the third bucket, which was interesting to us that we heard out, was really about the notion of agility. Given the pace of business in today's environment, that there's really a need for even leaders at the frontline level to be able to work agilely, to adjust to emerging realities in the business, adjust to emerging realities in their team, and to be flexible to be able to address that. And what that means is that not only do we need to take learners on an extended journey to help develop new managers, we need to be able to cover a broad set of capabilities as we do so. And so if we move to the next slide, we can talk about how we accomplish that in the programs. We've really tried to take a different kind approach to this. We don't have a month on mindset, a month on skills, a month on agility. We've created an integrated experience that takes participants through a comprehensive journey. So if I focus on launch into leadership, that 12-week experience, we've organized that around a learning by doing with impact approach. For those who are familiar with our partner programs for more senior leaders. That will be familiar to you. Inside that, it's composed of 6 2-week modules. So, 6 modules each of 2 weeks, in which we ask participants to tackle a challenge, to produce work, a deliverable, but also to have key performance moments, go out into the field and interact with others. Those bi-weekly modules, proceed in the early stages from things like assess my situation, where I focus, down to communicating the direction and driving impact, down to accelerating and realigning and adjusting to the current state as that emerges. Inside each of those 6-week modules, we work through a cycle, and the circle summarizes the cycle. I, as a participant, get a challenge. I, as a participant, am asked to do an assignment. I engage with others in the organization, and I also engage with peers. The final thing to say about the model we've used here is we did hear when we were chartering the program that being a new manager can be a lonely experience, and so the notion that I have an opportunity to engage with peers and others is quite critical. And so in the program, we've inserted key moments where we are able to participate with peers in live forums. We're able to participate in momentum coaching sessions. We're able to participate on a one-on-one basis with learning partners. That's the model. If you move to the final slide in this section, as part of that, again, those who are familiar with our partner programs will be, for more senior audiences, will know that they culminate in a deliverable. You can ask for a new manager, what would be a deliverable? Inside this program, to really help drive to action, we ask participants to complete step-by-step a leadership plan. And that leadership plan asks them to work through those actions that successful leaders take on the job, starting with identifying what their line of sight for organizational alignment is, identifying management priorities, thinking about their team situation, all the way through thinking about themselves as an individual, to identify a personal leadership mission. And so in the program, participants go through cycles of taking on tasks that successful leaders accomplish, getting content from experts, Dorie, on how I accomplish those tasks and what mindset I can adopt while I do them, and then driving that to action with a leadership plan, which they not only maintain and implement, they share out. So this is something that they align with at multiple points with their manager as they work through the program. So that's a snippet of what the program, how we've structured the program. With that in mind, let's turn to our conversation with Dorie. And so we collaborated closely with Dorie in pulling this program together. Dorie, I want to thank you for that. To introduce Dorie, I'm absolutely thrilled to be able to introduce Dorie for this conversation. Dorie is a strategy consultant with multinational organizations across industries. Many of you will be familiar with her writings and her books, with a particular focus on personal branding and how to develop mindsets and how to develop a personal sense of how I want to be. Dorie, one thing that we've been just particularly thrilled to see in working with Dorie in the program, and I think you'll see that today, is you can see some of the quotes here about how our participants have really resonated with Dorie's ability to connect and offer practical guidance on how to succeed as a new manager. So Dorie, really looking forward to the conversation with you today. Why don't we go ahead and get started with our conversation, driving strategic success on the front line. The way we'll structure this is we'll talk through a few different questions today. We're going to come at it from a couple of different angles. Why don't we start with a simple question? Now, Dorie, in order for me, if I'm a new manager, to be able to drive strategic success, I think I need to start by just aligning what the work is. Can you pitch in and help us out with, if I am a new manager, how can you help me think about how can I align what my team does to my organization's objectives?
Absolutely, Chip. So I think in a lot of ways, as I was crafting this course, one of the challenges that I set for myself was, I work with managers and leaders at all levels of companies, but I think it's really important for all of us, for the purposes of understanding how this can unfold effectively, to put ourselves in the mindset, like reach way back in time to being a new manager. It is actually a frightening job in a lot of ways. It's exciting, but you are suddenly being given responsibilities that you've never had before, and that there's really not been necessarily a lot of training for. You're thrown into the job, and you don't necessarily feel like you have people that you can talk to or ask, because if you go to your boss, who's the logical person, you might feel stupid, and you might worry that they are thinking you don't know how to do it, that they might be questioning your competence. And so there's a little bit of a struggle, because people want to do a good job so badly, but they may not know exactly how to do it. And so that's really the problem that I was trying to solve in working on this course, and really thinking back to the coaching and the consulting work that I've done over time with new managers. How do you equip them with the tools that they need to feel comfortable and feel confident, and to recognize that their boss and other people in the company are their allies, to know enough how to proceed, but to really make sure that they're able to ask the right questions. And so one of the biggest things that we hear from companies, and frankly that new managers themselves know is an issue, is the question of strategic alignment. When you have been an individual contributor, you are rewarded based on your ability to do the things you are told to do. And that is great. It's a wonderful thing to do, but it's a very different skill set than being a manager and being responsible for other people and guiding their activities. How do you know what to be directing them in, and how does that work? And so fundamentally, when it comes to strategic alignment, you have to be doing the right work, obviously, and you have to be doing it at a high quality. And so it's very much understanding your role in the organization. Sometimes people still maintain an individual contributor mindset of just, okay, tell me what to do. And clearly that's the wrong thing, because we need to train them to be asking the right questions, beginning to learn to see around corners, and taking more initiative. And so fundamentally, there's a couple of pieces involved. One is understanding what your boss's vision is, and being willing to raise your hand and actually ask the question, to understand that's not a sign of weakness. That's a sign of curiosity and intelligence and interest, is making sure that you are on the same page about what your boss wants and needs from you, and also more broadly, how your team's activities fit into what the company is doing. And also really being willing to step up and be proactive about your learning. You see on the slide here, it says follow industry news and trends. This is really important, because for the people who are willing to take the time to create a broader view and a broader context for themselves, that is how you can stand out. I mean, that's really the first step, is not just doing the rote thing that you've been told to do, but to have a sense of why that's the case, so that you get it, so that you can ask intelligent questions and be adding value, but also so that you can, the next phase, of course, is convey that effectively to your staff. Because if you're managing people and you say, okay, well, guys, we need to do X, Y, Z, well, obviously they're going to say, well, okay, why? And if the answer is just because, sort of like somebody talking to a 5-year-old who's asked too many questions, that is not the way to create staff longevity or loyalty or buy-in or motivation or any of the things that we know are really important in corporate life. You need to be able to paint a picture for people about how their contribution is adding up and making a difference. And nobody wants to be doing something and it's useless. There've been lots of examples and research about this, that if people feel like their work is pointless, they are going to check out. And frankly, as well they should. It's if you feel like you're doing something for absolutely no reason, for no meaning, then why? But of course, the issue, in corporate life is that there is a reason people are doing things, and it is the job of the new manager to help them understand how their contribution fits in. And when you have that, all of a sudden you're creating a kind of cohesion, a kind of purpose, a kind of motivation that's extremely powerful. And so in the course, we actually, really go in depth with folks about how to have those conversations, making sure that you understand the context and then that you are able to convey that effectively to the people who are working with you. That is how you get alignment.
That's fabulous, Dorie. And just to bounce off of that, I mean, that reflects so much of what we heard again from the clients with whom we collaborated as we developed this program. And that notion of adopting the right mindset and then having some simple steps I can follow is just something that we've seen kind of recur over and over again, in the areas that we've worked in. The notion here of being curious is a sign of strength as you struggle to identify the right work for your team. A few simple steps I can follow that if I have the right mindset in mind, I can do, and then the work that we do in the leadership plan, sending you out in the field to actually get it done, really great. Just as you've consulted with new managers and organizations who are working with new managers and they try to do this, where do you see that they struggle? Do they find this overly complicated? Do they think it too hard? Is it simply not trying to dig in and have the right mindset in the first place? What's your experience where new managers really struggle to make this step work?
Yeah, I think there's a few different ranges of mistakes, I guess you could say. The first one is in some cases it's actually just a question of not understanding that their role has changed in a fundamental way. I mean, of course, when you're a manager, right, you get it. Now you have to manage people. That makes sense. But I think that there is also a mindset shift that has to occur, and that is something that is much more subtle. It's not about your day-to-day duties. It's about how you think about your duties, about how you think about your responsibilities to the company and to yourself, frankly. And because that is implicit rather than explicit, a lot of new managers either don't pick up on it, and those are the ones, unfortunately, that fail, or it takes them a while to pick up on it. Over time they have to discover, oh, wait a minute, I need to be thinking about this really differently. And one of the goals for the course, frankly, is just to help people get up that S-curve faster so that they're not wasting time, learning on the company's dime in this slow and painful way while they're alienating the people under them. They want to do a good job. And so one of the themes that we really try to drive home is, look, you cannot be passive in this role. This is not, being an individual contributor in a lot of ways is like being in school. That's the thing that we have all been indoctrinated into over K through 12 education, and even undergraduate degrees. In a lot of cases, it's okay, here's the assignment, now go do the assignment. Okay, do it well to these specifications. We all know how to do that. That makes you a successful student. It makes you generally a successful individual contributor. All of a sudden, there is a seismic shift that occurs when you become a manager, because you are suddenly expected, oh my goodness, not just to do the thing you're told to do, but to raise your hand and to actually begin asking questions and to begin to have a strategic vision of your own. That doesn't mean that you're going rogue and freelancing and saying, nah, well, I won't do that, I'll do this other thing. But what it means is that you are increasingly being counted upon to be a smart strategic thinker and to be able to bring intelligence from the field upward. And if you're getting some kind of a directive that doesn't make a lot of sense, you're supposed to ask a question. Or if you're receiving intelligence that would actually be important to the higher ups in informing what they're doing, you are expected to bring that forward and to be able to know and tell the difference between what is signal and what is noise. And these are things that people may not know how to do. B, they may not even know that that's a thing they should be doing. And so we're really trying to raise that to the fore, that this is no longer just you sitting back and executing. This is you rising to a new level of strategic thinking and using a new part of your brain, and really dramatically having the ability to maximize your impact, because it's no longer what you with two hands can do. It's you with however many people that you are guiding. You can have a dramatic, focused, leveraged impact as a result of that.
Oh, Dorie, I think we could spend all of our time and more digging into how do I actively take a stance and negotiate expectations as I align my team to do the right work. But I mean, just in the we have ground to cover in the interest of trying to give a little bit broader lens. Why don't we move forward? I mean, so one question is how do I do that active negotiation to really align the right work? But as a new leader, is my job done at that point? How can I, as a new leader, take the next step to not only line up the right work, but to really help my team, succeed in achieving the results we're looking for from that work?
Yeah, it's an important question, Chip. And the metaphor that we came up with and used in the course really is, it's kind of like an orchestra conductor, in the sense that, first of all, the conductor, of course, is not playing every instrument. That would be a crucial mistake if he or she tried to do that. What they are trying to do is to bring out the best performance in everybody else who is under their charge or under their command, and so it involves both understanding how the piece itself overall should sound. In the business metaphor, of course, it is, what is the goal that we are aiming toward collectively? But it's also much more nuanced. If you're an orchestra conductor, wait a minute, this person on the first violin tends to play a little too loud, and so if that's the case, it drowns out the bassoons over there, and so we need to get her to soften up her playing just a little bit to make everything else fit better. It's that level of both big picture and individual nuance to help everybody get the best performance themselves individually and as a group. And so as a way to do it, there's really a process, there's kind of a four-step process that we would look at. And the first step, of course, is really making sure that your team understands what they're aiming at. What are you trying to do? First of all, what is the deadline? Because if we leave that loosey-goosey, you know what happens. It kind of spirals a little bit out of control. So you have to be very clear about the objective you're setting, first of all. But then, humans are humans, right? And there are some people, to be sure, that if you say, come back here in 6 months with XYZ developed, that they will go off and they will do it, and they will do an amazing job. But that person is pretty darn rare. That's maybe 1 in 100. That's maybe 1 in 1,000 that can do that. And so we do not plan for that as managers and as leaders. For most people, they may hit some roadblocks. They may not know where to get started. They may get confused along the way. They may have some kind of an obstacle. Oh, I'm trying to get blah, blah data from this other department and they won't give it to me, whatever it is. So your job as the manager, as the conductor, is to try to smooth out these roadblocks, to try to help your people get the things done. And that is why the second step is scheduling these routine check-ins, and depending on the length of the project. I mean, if you're doing a 1-month sprint, maybe you're talking every day. If you're doing a 6-month project, maybe every week you have a check-in of some sort. But you basically just want to make sure, hey, is everything going okay? Are we on schedule? Are there problems that I can help you with? And that's a really important routine, because, many people, we probably all experienced this. You need a little micro deadline to kind of keep you going and keep you moving forward. So that's helpful. Obviously, a big one is making sure that the expectations along the way are very clearly set, so that people know what excellence looks like. They know what they're aiming toward. They have a clear model in their head about it. And then another place where people sometimes fall down, but is very important for new managers to be able to get clear on, is tracking the assignments and making sure that things actually get done and get completed. There is certainly a tendency sometimes, without, if people have not been trained in this, to just say, oh, okay, Phil, go off and do XYZ, and then you might feel like, oh, well, it's off my plate, now it's on Phil's, he can handle it. But that may not happen. Phil may not be the most organized guy in the world, and so you have to understand as the manager that it never really gets off your plate until it is really legitimately done. And so it's kind of understanding how to simultaneously be tracking things that you are waiting on, checking in on, kind of the back burner, hey, I'm keeping an eye on this, versus, here's the thing that I'm literally doing today on the front burner. But you need to know how to separate those things out, and that becomes a really important skill.
That's fabulous, and I also, just in the title that we've used on the slide, the notion of doing this without micromanaging. I mean, I know in the program, beyond being so clear about here's some really powerful, simple tactical steps I can take. You've also given guidance on how can I as a leader do this without going too far. How can I prioritize? How can I right size what my effort is? And I also love just the metaphor of the conductor. Again, that notion of mindset is so critical to enabling success. If we can combine mindset with some really powerful tactical guidance like the 4 steps here, and by the way, helping you avoid common errors like actually jumping in and doing too much, being a micromanager, that can really help us create the journey that will help our participants become successful in the new role. Let me keep us moving ahead. Why don't we jump to the next question, which is, okay, I've lined up the right work. Okay, I'm tracking my team, and I'm thinking that we as a team are not done until the work is done. So it's not enough for me to set it up and move on to something else and trust my team, but it's trust and verify. Even in that world, even if I do a good job, sometimes things break, and that can be such a traumatic moment for a new manager who's really very eager to demonstrate how they can handle this new job that they have the opportunity to work in. Dorie, if I am a new manager and I've been doing my best and things break, how can I respond to that?
Yeah, well, there's the most important thing is to understand how not to respond to it. So we'll get to how to respond to it in a minute. But how not to respond is, I think many people intellectually know that it is a bad idea to kill the messenger, to yell at the person who brings you the bad news. And yet there is a very human tendency and temptation to do that. I mean, we just, frankly, we don't want to hear it. It's, it's terrible. It's not what we want to, we want, yes, we want the truth, but really we just want things to go well. And when you're a new manager and you're not, you don't have a lot of experience under your belt managing these things, these are very emotionally high stakes things for you. When a project is going poorly or it's off track somehow, it really becomes existential questions, because it's not just, oh my gosh, the project is off, people will be upset, or the company will lose money. It's oh my gosh, this is one of my very first opportunities and I'm blowing it. What are they going to think of me? Are they going to find me out? Or am I going to lose my job? Am I going to lose status? What is going to happen? And so there's all these things swirling around in a new manager. And so if that person is not careful, they may well lash out. They may well say, what's wrong with you? Why didn't you see this? Blah, blah, blah. And unfortunately, at that point, it's counterproductive to berate the person. What we actually need to do, on the contrary, is to create a culture that rewards people for coming to you early with problems. If people become afraid of you as a leader, then of course they're gonna procrastinate telling you bad news. Nobody wants to, get the flare up. And but it is very, very much in your interest as a leader to get bad news as soon as possible, so that you can act on it before it becomes terrible news. So a way to do that is that the first time anyone is brave enough to try, basically, to bring you bad news, you need to hold that person up as a role model and to thank them and to really praise them, because what we want is sentinels. We want canaries in the coal mine telling you, hey, I think this could be falling behind schedule, or hey, there may be a problem here, because that is how you avoid bigger problems down the road. That's what's really key. And so there are three key questions that we really need to be asking when it comes to understanding what's going on. That's the key. It's not about beating people up about things that have already happened and you can't control. It really becomes about understanding what happened so that you can fix it and prevent it. So the first thing, of course, is why did it happen? You got to get to the bottom of that very quickly. Can't really solve it if you don't know what's up. The second is, how do you prevent it in the future? Because obviously you don't want something that will be a recurring problem for you, that every month you're dealing with the same thing. And then you begin to return to the question at hand, which is, well, what can you do right now? How bad is it? How far behind schedule are you? And you can begin to think about ways to do it. So as a new manager, there's a variety of different possibilities that you could look into, or potential solutions, and we can even just go to the next slide to take a look at some of them. But the first one is, you may be able to get help from another division or another team in your company. You could potentially go to them directly. You could, if it's a big enough deal, certainly you're going to want to tell your boss, and they may be able to marshal some resources for you. You may be, in some circumstances, be able to just work your way out of it. If the team pitches in, presuming that that this is something that is not a massive problem or long-standing thing, you may be able to just roll up your sleeves and say, you know what, guys, we got to work through the weekend, and we can bust through and we can do it. And sometimes it really is going to involve some creative thinking, and it becomes about tapping everybody's best ideas and thinking up new solutions that may not be immediately apparent. But what it all really starts with is understanding that you as a leader are setting the tenor for what is the norm in your particular corner of the world. And I think a lot of new managers are not really aware of that. They're not yet cognizant of themselves as leaders. It's kind of like the puppy that grew really fast, and they still think they're a little puppy, and then they jump on somebody's lap, and the person basically suffocates because the puppy is like now 120 pounds. They don't understand that they are carrying a new weight, a new gravitas, and that other people are looking to them for clues, for cues about how to be in the world. And a good leader, a smart leader, is going to want to be sending the cue, I want to know about problems before they really become problems. And so that's why one of the things that we really hammer home is the importance of regular team check-ins, so that you catch things when they're still small. It's about the importance of tracking metrics, so that if things are a little squishy, then there's a lot more room for error and problems. And so we want things to be when it comes to tracking metrics, we want them to be as non-squishy as possible. And it's all about early detection.
Yeah, that's and as a new leader, it can be so easy for me to think, oh my God, something broke. I'm the leader, my responsibility, let me go fix it. And these ideas are so helpful to broaden my lens, for that, which is back to your conductor metaphor, Dorie, that what I'm doing here is I'm helping make the issue transparent. I'm helping mobilize the organization. I'm helping create a system where, of course, things are going to go south sometimes, and we work with that, and we work with that in different ways depending on the situation. So really, really helpful. Now let me move us ahead to the final section that we wanted to cover today, which is so far we've really talked about how do I align the work that my team does with what the organization is going to create value for the organization? How do I communicate that value to my team so that, it's not just because we said you do this, but it's you gain value from your work because you can see how important it is to the value we're creating in the world. How we stay on top of that as a manager and manage it actively as we do in the program. How we recognize failure. For example, in the program, how we've inserted an after-action review based on a quick win that a participant tries to accomplish in the world with their team. And so we learn from failure. All that's about getting the work done. At the same point, part of my responsibility as a leader beyond that is growing the organization, in particular growing my team. If I am a new manager, it can be really easy for me to keep my head down. How can I balance the short-term goals that I'm trying to generate with some longer-term goals that are important to the organization?
Yeah, this is very much a conundrum for new managers, and frankly for all kinds of managers, but especially for new managers, because it is tricky, right? We all know in our own lives that it is much faster and much more efficient if you have a project that needs to be done to give it to people who already know how to do it, right? That kind of makes intuitive sense because it's viewed through one lens, it is a waste of time to give it to new people who need to be trained up and educated. And oh no, that's not the way to do it. You want excellence, you want speed, you want results, all of those good things that we want in corporate life. But there's a flip side of that, because if you keep giving the same people the same work all the time, first of all, those people may well end up pretty bored because they're just doing the same thing. It's like, hello, are they a robot? They may not want to do the same thing all the time. And it means that you're actually creating a long-term liability for yourself, because if those people leave, well, who's going to do it? You've got a few people who are your go-to people, and then everybody else is untrained in how to do that thing, whether that thing is public speaking and making high stakes presentations, whether it is practicing some other skill or element that you need to do. It becomes dangerous to have an over reliance on a few specific people. So as a manager, you need to be balancing the short-term and long-term development of your people. So one thing that, and this is the part that actually for new managers can be pretty fun, if once you clue them in that, like, hey, you can do this and this is a great thing to do, is to really help them help their people develop. And so step one is actually having conversations and really getting a sense from your employees about, well, what do they want to learn? What do they want to do? Because if it's coming from them, first of all, they're highly motivated. They're really interested if they're raising their hand and they're saying, hey, I'd really like to do more stuff with multimedia production, or I'd really like to do more international work. And so it becomes kind of a fun, like, pattern matching or pattern recognition for you to be able to say, oh, well, if Alyssa's been interested in doing this, maybe I could plug her in here and she'd have that chance. And that way, the job is going to get done, but it's a way of kind of giving somebody. It's like giving them a bonus without money in some ways, because you're able to give them the benefit of really getting to learn something they're keyed up about. So it becomes about matching projects and team members together, so that it could be a project in your department, it could be a project outside the department, but thinking through how do we get them the information, the skills, the opportunities that they are coveting and craving, that makes them more interested and engaged and loyal. Now, part of the balance here, though, is understanding the stakes of each project, basically, because anybody who plays sports knows this, right? You are not putting in the rookie freshman into the final 10 minutes of the league championship game. That is not when you do it. You want your established, highly trained professional squad for the most high stakes moments, because you just can't, there's some things you can't afford to screw up. But If something is relatively lower stakes, let's say it's an internal meeting versus a meeting with clients, well, maybe that's the chance where you get the person who's a little nervous about public speaking, you give them a chance to get up in front of the room and give it a try. And it's looking for those moments where it actually becomes a win-win and you're able to do it. So, ultimately it's sort of this three-step process of first asking your team where they'd like to grow, then it's matching them to the appropriate projects, and of course, third, having the understanding of the risk level or the stakes of those projects, so that you can set it up so that your people are in a position to succeed.
Yeah, that's fabulous. And I know we want to leave some time for questions and answers with the people who have joined us today. So if sharpen your pencils, enter your questions into the questions box and go to webinar, and we'll get to questions in just a second. Dorie, thanks for this. I know just in terms of we talked about the idea of a leadership mission as part of what we have in Launch into Leadership, and this is an area that can be so rewarding for leaders as they think about who they want to be when they grow up, to use your phrase, Dorie, and helping their team members develop and balancing that with how to get the work done day to day while making it all work for the business can be such a fun puzzle for people to put together. Now, Adam, let me pause at this moment and see, I know if you can provide a little bit of a capstone for us as we begin to move into Q&A.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Chip and Dorie. Great overview. So one of the takeaways for me is something we thought about a lot in the design of the program, which is that mindset is something that you do. And as we've structured the program, we created a cadence of mindset, guidance, and application, doing, with the leadership plan really at the center of it. And so far, our participants really seem to like the approach that we're taking. So if I look at sort of the top right, and some of the participant feedback that we've received in the program that we've had so far, my favorite quote is, I like that our time is really spent honing in on our vision, goals, strategies, line of sight, et cetera, that really creates value for us instead of hours spent writing papers and essays that aren't as practical in nature. So really some strong feedback in terms of thinking about that leadership plan, thinking about mindset is something that you do, and becoming activated and doing things along those lines. So as I'm going to walk through a couple more pages just in terms of when the programs are launching, but want to, as I'm doing that, definitely feel free to start putting any kind of questions that you have into the chat box, to the point that Chip was making earlier. So let me share with you the key dates for the program. So we have just launched the first cohort. It was on February 25th, and we have received great feedback on that cohort, as we mentioned earlier, thanks to the great work from our instructional design team and from Dorie and our other expert, Ori Brofman. That program concludes on May 19th. So the next launch date is April 20th. So if you're thinking about your new manager population that may have been promoted for the winter, and how do we get them activated, that's a really good choice as you're thinking about, advancing that new population of managers that you have at your organization. Now, we also have start times in July, September, and October. And so one of the nice things about this program is it's very flexible. We have a lot of different start times across the year to accommodate your organization as new managers come online. So what do you do if you want to learn more? Well, we will be reaching out after the call to see if you would like to schedule some time to talk to our advisory team. So you can also cut to the head of the line by contacting us at advisory@ExecOnline.com, and you can schedule a custom assessment of your new manager needs with one of our advisors. And so that our advisors are former consultants and practitioners in the HR space with years of experience in the new manager world as well. So let's get to questions and answers. And again, please, add any questions that you have for Dorie. You've got Dorie on the line here, or for ExecOnline into the chat box, and then I will direct it to the right person. So one question that we had, that I want to direct to Dorie is, would you briefly speak to the need to consistently communicate the overall corporate goals to the team to assume there is appropriate alignment within the team?
Yeah, definitely. So, this is something that is really important because I came out of a background working in politics, and we always had a saying on the campaigns that I worked on that people needed to hear your name as the candidate 7 times before they would even consider voting for you. And I think that is a powerful lesson that stayed with me, and I think is perhaps even more relevant in the corporate environment, because all the time you hear this sort of disjunct where the leader's like, but I told people, blah, blah, blah. And the employees are like, no, you didn't. We've never heard this. And of course, the truth is somewhere in between, which is that the leader probably did say it, but he or she said it maybe once or maybe twice. And it is not enough. We live in a very crowded, noisy world. And if you say something once or twice, it is just not going to sink in. You have to do it repeatedly. And so this is why something that I really stress and I think is important in the course is understanding that strategic alignment is not just this one and done thing. It's not just like, okay, I told people how their work aligns with what the company's goals are. Boom, now we're done. See you in 2021. It has to be an ongoing thing. Now, it doesn't mean that literally every week you have to go back over it like a mantra, but it does mean that on an ongoing basis, where it is relevant, the leader needs to make sure that they're context setting for people and that they view it as an ongoing part of the dialogue, not just something that they took care of once and then they feel like their responsibilities are officially dispatched.
Great, thank you, Dorie. So another question for you, Dorie, as well. Coming from one of our participants, how would you speak to corporate and business function culture, or lack thereof, as an obstacle to the development that you just discussed?
Corporate and business function culture. Well, I'm assuming that what the questioner is talking about is that within certain functional areas there may just be a kind of implicit cultural zeitgeist that in some way mitigates against what we're talking about, and there's probably a million ways that might be the case. Sort of every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way, as they say. But what I would say here is that even if the new manager is operating in a culture that is that may have some quirks, and I'll say quirks in kind of a loving way, although maybe they operate in a dysfunctional functional area, who knows. But that is a difficult circumstance. But the thing is, part of the responsibility, and I think something that actually a lot of new managers, once you clue them in that this is a possibility, actually becomes almost singularly motivating and meaningful to people, is that as a manager, you are creating your own world where you are helping your people to thrive and you are protecting them to a certain extent. You are creating air cover for them to learn and grow and succeed. And that, in a world where, as we know, so many employees, unfortunately, not in your companies, I'm sure, but in the broad corporate sense, so many people are disengaged. It is extraordinarily meaningful for managers, once they fully understand and embrace what it means, that you are able to really help guide these people, and regardless of what is happening outside, you can help create meaning and relevance and growth for your people. Now, again, the role of the manager, it's being a liaison in many ways. It's aligning between what is happening in the broader corporate context and with your people. But even if your manager is not the most expressive, or even if your manager, your boss, is not great at some of these things, that doesn't mean that you as a new manager are not able to do that. You have the opportunity to take much more agency in creating a great culture, at least for your people, at least for the things that you can control. That is the message that I really try to send.
And just to build on that, Dorie, I mean, I know in working with you on the program, one source of energy behind that is the question of, as you grow as a leader, who do you want to be and what do you want to be known for? And so, I think that's one of the reasons why amongst, the alignment activities and the performance management activities that we have in the program, why we also have moments where I step back and, for example, I define my personal leadership mission. And that helps me give myself permission to ask that question, say, hey, what's the culture I want to create for my team, and then work from there. So just wanted to pitch that in as part of the answer to that, part of the response to the great question.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
Great, thanks. I think I've got one more for Dorie before we sort of close out. So Dorie, another one that we heard is, as you said, it's not a one and done, and persistent communications are crucial. What other practical advice would you have for embedding values like accountability, for example?
Yeah. So when it comes to embedding accountability and other things like that, so a key point, a key through line of this course is the unique importance that a manager has, because people are looking to them. And so one of the things that I was really excited that we were able to do in the course was to really both look at the question of how the manager liaises with their people, their employees that they're managing, but also how that manager manages themselves. Because it's both. You may not be an individual contributor anymore, but you also still need to continue to apply the lens to yourself about how can I improve personally? How can I improve at my job? Your job description has changed over time. It's not so much doing a thing as it is, orchestrating a group. But a big part of it is questions like accountability. Are you doing what you say you're going to do? Are you being clear in what you're asking for and fair in how you're helping people and how you're setting and monitoring those expectations? And the way that you are with yourself and to other people it's sending very strong signals to other people about this is the way we do business here. This is what is expected here. And so I think in a lot of ways it's kind of a clarion call for the new managers to understand that they want to and ought to, we're giving them the tools to continue to improve themselves as leaders and as professionals, and that in so doing, it actually has a dramatic leveraged impact because it's setting a culture that, if you do it right, becomes self-perpetuating in all the right ways.
Great, thank you, Dorie. And so I think we're coming up on time. I wanted to let sort of everyone know that we've got a number of other questions in the queue, around the measurement, around the alignment with performance management. We'll be following up with those answers to those different questions at the conclusion of the webinar. We're down to the last 2 minutes. I actually thought I would, maybe push one over to Chip real quickly. I thought it was a good question. There's a big push toward coaching the team as a player coach versus managing. Also a focus on trust. Does your program focus on these areas?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know from even the early days of conceptualizing the program, as we've talked about, what is it that a new manager, who is a new manager, and what does a new manager need to be successful? The notion that so many new managers really are in the player coach position, not necessarily versus managing while continuing to be a player, is something that we clearly recognize in the program. And so, in the program, we do have decisions about, when do I delegate and for what reasons do I delegate? To Dorie's point about when do I put in the A team and when is it safer for me to try to leverage those development opportunities? And throughout the program, I think the notion of trust, I think trust and verify. How do I create an environment where the value of the contribution our team is making to the broader organization is crystal clear, where we're recognized for that contribution, where we make sure that the work we do, we understand how it's aligned and how each piece of it is creating value. But also, the notion that I'm cared for. And so my leader, is not just in the corner getting their work done, but they're around checking in on me to make sure I'm comfortable, and they're making sure the work gets done, using some of the ideas that we shared earlier in this session with Dorie. So, absolutely, one element. It's interesting as we talked with our clients about, who are the people you consider to be new managers, just how diverse that group is. I mean, it's everything from, I'm thinking I will be a manager shortly to, I've been a manager in a different organization. How do I be a manager here? To, I'm one person on a player coach and a team of 3 or 4, to some people who really are dedicated full-time managers, and I got 12 people that I'm working with. How can I succeed in that? And, fundamentally, I think what we found is that the underlying capabilities cut across those different use cases.
Great, thank you, and thanks everyone as well for your participation on the line. We are now at time. We hope you have a good day. And again, if you'd like to get started with us right away, it's advisory at executiveboard.com. We could talk about all of those great questions that you had in terms of metrics, in terms of alignment with performance management, and your other new manager needs. So thank you very much again, and thank you to Dorie and Ori as well.